introductions of the panelists and talk about the program. I'm Max Stearns, I'm the moderator. And before I do any of that, what I'd like to do is introduce our new dean, Donald Tobin. Dean Tobin is a graduate of Duke University and Georgetown Law School. After working as a staff member for Senator Paul Sarbanes, he worked for the Joint Economic Committee of Congress and then the Senate Committee on the Budget. Dean Tobin clerked here in Baltimore for Judge Francis Murnahan on the United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit. That's the level of court just below the Supreme Court. After which he joined the tax division of the U.S. Justice Department as an appellate attorney. He then began his academic career at Ohio State's Moritz College of Law, where he was the John C. Elam Voris Sater Professor of Law, and he served as Associate Dean, first for Academic Affairs, and then as Associate Dean for Faculty. While at Ohio State, Dean Tobin co-founded and served as co-director of the program on law and leadership, and he is a leading expert in tax law and policy, and I'm delighted to introduce him to you. Please welcome Dean Tobin.
Thank you all for being here, and welcome to Maryland Carey Law's 8th Annual Constitution Day. Before we start, I want to thank the people who helped put this together. We have a partnership with the Maryland League of Women Voters, who helps promote and co-sponsor this event and has in the past. And so a special thanks to Susan Cochran, the president of the Maryland League, and Andrea Gruhl, who worked with Associate Dean Stearns to help this come off today. Probably most of you know the League of Women's Voters and the importance it has to democracy and our institutions in the state and the country, and it's just a real honor to be able to partner with them to put forward this event for you today. I also want to take a moment to welcome the MLaw students and Professor Coolish here today. As some of you know, there's a new program at the University of Maryland in MLaw, which is a partnership with the undergraduate University of Maryland College Park undergraduate school and the law school. I'm new here, so I wasn't a part of starting MLaw, but to me, it's really a magical partnership. It's one I'm really, really excited about, and it's a way that the two universities can work together to I think, do something really special at College Park. So welcome to all of you. When I was an undergraduate student, I was trying to figure out what it is that I was going to do with my life, and what was key and very important to me was finding ways to make positive change. And the more you look, the more you realize that that's what lawyers do. Lawyers are the mechanism, really, for positive change in our society. And if we look at the history of our country and the world, we can look at the real impact that lawyers have had to make that happen. We're the profession of Abraham Lincoln, of Mahatma Gandhi, and of Nelson Mandela, Thurgood Marshall. And when we look back and see that the change that lawyers have been able to effectuate in different areas, it's something that we need to step back and be proud of. I think about Ruth Bader Ginsburg and her work protecting equal rights for women before she was a Supreme Court justice. So each of these lawyers have had a profound impact on the lives of people in our country and in the world. So today's panel gives us an opportunity to focus on an important set of questions related to one of the most powerful institutions in our country, the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court has played a very interesting role throughout history, sometimes promoting social change and sometimes standing in its way. When you get to be a lawyer, when you have the privilege of being a lawyer, you get to be a part of that process. So we're incredibly fortunate today to have with us 3 former Supreme Court clerks who will be speaking with you today. Dean Stearns will introduce them formally, and I'll simply say that each of them has had a rare behind-the-scenes access to the justices they serve. And most importantly, they can offer you unique insights on the justices, how the thinking happens at the Supreme Court, and what happens as jurists and scholars. And so I'm pleased they're here and look forward to the enlightening discussion. And so now I'll turn the podium over to Dean Stearns, who will start the program. And have a great experience today. Welcome, and please come back. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dean Tobin. I should say this for the benefit of our guests who are undergraduates at the University of Maryland in College Park. You know, you probably have seen folks wearing a T-shirt that quotes Shakespeare, and it says, "The first thing we do, let's kill all the lawyers." And it quotes King Henry VI, and the quote's actually quite precisely accurate. That is, in fact, the quote from the play. But here's the piece that they don't have the appropriate notation on the T-shirt to let you know. If you actually read the play, and you actually read the quote in context, what the quote is designed to convey is that if you want to achieve despotism and the end of actually having a rights-based society, what's the first thing you do? You kill all the lawyers. So Shakespeare well understood the importance of lawyers to social change, and you should too, because that really is entirely true. So I want to acknowledge, again, the League of Women Voters for their role in co-sponsoring the earlier event and this event. The president of the League is Susan Cochran. Andrea Gruhl is one of the directors, and she has been instrumental in doing this annually. For this particular event, I also want to thank Robert Coolidge, who's the director of the MLaw program at the University of Maryland at College Park. And also, I want to acknowledge I want to acknowledge Professor Robert Percival, who is here. He is our resident Supreme Court clerk. He clerked for Justice Byron White, and he has his law degree from Stanford. And for those of you who are particularly interested in environmental law, he runs our environmental program. So he's somebody you would be interested in getting to know. So what I'd like to do now is welcome you all to the Star-Spangled City, where a few days ago we celebrated the 200th anniversary of what became our national anthem. And of course, today we mark the 227th anniversary of the signing of the United States Constitution. Before I introduce this terrific group of speakers, I would like to put our topic, the Supreme Court Justice as Constitutional Scholar, in context. In recent years, 3 justices, Justice Breyer, Justice Scalia, and now retired Justice Stearns, have published books to offer their broader thinking about legal questions, questions of constitutional law and governance. And it's certainly not unheard of for a justice to write a book. Justice Story published his famous commentaries on the Constitution of the United States in 1833, in the middle of his judicial tenure from 1811 to 1845. Still, it is somewhat unusual, at least in the modern era. Although retired Justice Sandra Day O'Connor and Justice Sonia Sotomayor each published books, theirs strike a more autobiographical tone, which isn't terribly surprising given the unique historical roles they've played as the first woman and the first Hispanic to serve on the Supreme Court. We might imagine a world in which the justices limit their roles to deciding cases, and others, lawyers, law professors, media commentators, assess more generally how the cases or how broader doctrines fit together. But it's also easy to appreciate why the justices themselves might find frustration in that sort of crabbed or formalistic understanding of their roles. Part of the problem is that the Supreme Court decides cases en banc, which is kind of a fancy way of saying as a court of the whole. Barring some recusal, all 9 justices hear each case. Of course, the resulting opinions don't always speak for the entirety of the court. More typically, it will speak for a majority or a plurality, although quite often it also will be the case that there'll be an opinion for the court as a whole. What Mick Jagger and Keith Richards described in a different context applies with equal force to this style of committee draftsmanship. You can't always get what you want. This is one of the reasons why legal academics who study constitutional law often focus on separate opinions, concurrences in the judgment and dissents, in which justices can speak more freely and in their own voices. Yet even then, the justices are substantially constrained by the particulars of the immediate case. In one recent case, Chief Justice Robert criticized Justice Sotomayor for describing how her personal life experience affected her views on the merits of affirmative action, when the case itself involved a somewhat separate, albeit closely related, question of substantive doctrine. So we might think of the project of the justice as scholar as providing an opportunity for the justices to craft their concurrences or dissents writ large, unaffected by the group negotiations and untethered to the immediate concerns of the immediate case. It's also possible, however, that like a person who stands too close to a Roy Lichtenstein painting, they are apt to see individual dots or a collection or grouping of dots rather than the larger wall-size comic strip image that those dots comprise. Without the distant perspective as a prisoner on a ship, might Francis Scott Key have lacked the capacity to compose his enduring poem? I certainly don't suggest that law faculty are especially poetic, and there's no doubt that we academics like to affect how cases are decided, and that jurists might offer their own special insights into how the various pieces fit together, assuming, that is, that the pieces do fit together. Our speakers are especially well suited to address the tension, if there is one, between the role of the justice as jurist on the one hand and as scholar on the other. They each boast tremendously impressive credentials, and I'm only going to offer some highlights. Thiru Vignarajah is a graduate of Yale College and Harvard Law School, where he was the president of the Harvard Law Review. You might have heard of another former president of the Harvard Law Review. He's the man who appointed Justices Elana Kagan and Sonia Sotomayor to sit on the United States Supreme Court. Thiru clerked for Justice Guido Calabresi on the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit, and then he clerked for Justice Stephen Breyer. After serving as a federal prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Baltimore, Thiru is now serving as Chief of Major Investigation in the state's Attorney's Office in Baltimore City. Rebecca Tableson is a graduate of Yale College and the Yale Law School, where she was the articles editor of the Yale Law Journal. She clerked for Judge Brett Kavanaugh of the United States Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit before clerking for Justice Antonin Scalia. Aaron Zielinski is a graduate of Yale College and Yale Law School, where he served as executive editor of the Yale Law and Policy Review. Aaron clerked for Judge Paul Griffith of the United States Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit before serving as an adjunct professor in Peking University's School of Transnational Law. He then clerked for Justice John Paul Stevens in retirement, which has the amazing added benefit of allowing him to have clerked for two justices for the price of one. He also spent substantial time clerking for Justice Kennedy. He will soon be working as an assistant U.S. attorney in Baltimore. I should add that Thiru and Aaron have also served as adjunct professors here, as some in the room actually know, having been their students. Thiru teaches law and education. Aaron has taught civil procedure. The proceedings are going to go in the order of not the clerks' last names, but the last names of the justices for whom they clerked. Either way, that puts Aaron Zielinski last. Which in fact will be the case today. And we're going to begin with Thiru, who clerked for Justice Breyer, and B is first. They'll each speak for about 12 to 15 minutes, after which we'll have questions before we break to go out and chat informally, and I think there may even be some food accompanying that. So, Thiru.